Maybe the city needs our friend more than you think.
When it was announced back in 2016 at Sony's E3 press conference that Insomniac Games would partner with Marvel to develop the next Spider-Man game, as a studio renowned for their fast and fluid traversal systems and fun and entertaining writing and dialogue, it seemed like a match made in heaven, and certainly something divine has come out of their relationship. See what I did there? Whether you're a Spider-Man nut or a complete newbie, this game has something for everyone. In simple terms, it's an amazing achievement by Insomniac Games and should be called the Spectacular Spider-Man. Okay, enough with the puns, but seriously, Spider-Man on the PS4 is an incredibly fun game to play and has so much to offer that it is a must-buy for any PS4 owner. I just feel bad that our fellow gamers on the Xbox One and PC can't enjoy what has to be the best Spider-Man game ever made. I know that's a huge statement, but stick with me here while I give you the reasons for this bold claim. Now, Spider-Man is the first licensed game that Insomniac Games have ever developed, as they usually stick to original properties, but it is clear that the team at Insomniac are avid Spider-Man fans, and this passion and love can definitely be seen in the quality and polish apparent in every aspect of the game. Let's start with the story. For those that are worried about jumping in without any prior knowledge of the comics, movies, or even previous Spider-Man games, you needn't worry. Insomniac Games have created their own original story and unique universe here. Of course, they have for the most part been faithful to the source material, which many Spider-Man fans will be happy to hear. There are, however, some changes, including changes to the origin stories of some characters and even the professions and personality traits of others. But because the writing is of such a high quality, these changes are handled well and fit perfectly into the overall narrative of the game. The story of Insomniac's Spider-Man is refreshing because it isn't an origin story. Like myself, most Spider-Man fans are burnt out from movies and games that with each rendition tell the story of how Peter Parker became Spider-Man, and with great power comes great responsibility, yada 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 and all that. The Peter Parker in this version is an older and more experienced character, in his early 20s and just out of college. He has been fighting crime as Spider-Man for about 8 years, and so there is a certain level of confidence and wisecrackery that is fun to see. In fact, the humour in the game is on point and delivered well by Yuri Lowenthal. If you're going to make a Spider-Man game, the two most important elements to get right are probably the web swinging and the humour. So it was a relief to see that the humour in the game really lands, is well written, contextual, and really enhances your overall experience.
From his elevated position, Spider-Cop spies his destination. A second surveillance tower.
Are you narrating yourself?
What? No, of course not. The chief never did understand Spider-Cop. Thought he was a loose cannon.
Already regretting this.
As for the web swinging, I'll get to that a little later on in the review. The main story is one of the game's strongest points, lasting about 20 hours with some side story content. It spans across 3 main acts. The first act begins with an epic tutorial mission as you face off against Wilson Fisk, and then slows down considerably as the story explores the duality of Peter's life as he struggles to find a balance between his job as Spider-Man and his own life outside of the costume. While this act may feel a little slow and draggy for those that like action, it's an important part of the story that spends time introducing some of the main characters and introducing players to their backstory, motivations, and relationship to our hero. It's time well spent, and as a result, when the shit really does hit the fan and the story picks up pace in the second and third act, we know the characters well and are invested in the outcome of their story. These side cast of characters are excellent and really well fleshed out. I especially liked this version of Mary Jane, who in this game works as a journalist and is very much inspired by Superman's Lois Lane. She is smart, resourceful, feisty and fearless to a fault. While you could argue that her characterization is not original or unique by any stretch, I still found her to be an incredibly likable character. Really enjoyed the banter between her and Peter, and thought that Laura Bailey did an excellent job in her delivery and portrayal. Another standout performance for me was William Salyer's portrayal of Dr. Octavius, who he depicted as a very human and tragic character. His character development and storyline was actually one of my favourites in the game. Now, of course, this is a superhero game, and I know you're dying to ask, Kate, are there many known Spider-Man villains in the game? Well, rest assured, faithful viewer, the game does not disappoint. While I don't want to spoil which villains are included, though I'm sure Insomniac have already kind of spoiled that for you in their trailers, a lot of the Spider-Man villains that we all know and love are here, though most of them are pretty much crammed into Act 3, which goes a little something like this. Here's a villain, and another villain, and another. Next villain. Here's a boss fight. Boss fights are fun, right? It does feel a little cramped and sudden, and it might have been better to spread these encounters throughout the game, but it's still epically cool and exciting to play, and the culmination of the story is incredibly satisfying and moving, which many single-player games have failed at recently. Finally, let's talk about the voice acting and facial animations, both of which are top notch. Seriously, the facial animations in Insomniac Spider-Man are impressively detailed and nuanced, making the cinematic scenes and acting that much more convincing and emotionally impactful.
You helping me through college and working here, and sacrificing so much and asking for nothing. I just wish there were more people like you in the world.
He's right. 5 years ago, you walked in here and told me you were inspired by my mission to help others. Now it's you who inspires me. Thank you, May, for everything. Here's to many more years of service.
The last game that I can think which had this level of quality was probably Uncharted 4. The cast of characters and actors hired to play the roles do an outstanding job, and the music is both heroic and nostalgic, and perfectly pitched to match what is happening in-game. Even the sound effects are excellent, from NPC dialogue to the sound of web slinging, vehicles and weapons. Everything combines together perfectly to create a truly immersive, first-rate experience. Next, let's look at navigation, the open world setting and side content available to players. Firstly, the map is huge and completely open from the start of the game. The setting of New York is impressively detailed and faithful, and you can swing pretty much anywhere in the city. Graphically speaking, it is a stunningly beautiful looking game in both daytime and nighttime, and lends itself well to the popular photo mode included in the game. One of my favourite things to do was to climb to the top of the Empire State Building and look out on the city, especially as the sun was setting. The draw distance in this game is certainly impressive. The city is also a lot of fun to explore, in no small part to the incredible web swinging and traversal mechanics in-game. For the last 13 years, Treyarch's Spider-Man 2 has held the #1 spot as the benchmark for great web slinging mechanics, thanks to Jamie Fryston's revolutionary Spidey simulator. No game since has managed to recapture the exhilarating feeling of swinging and capture that feeling of being Spider-Man. Until now, that is. Insomniac have taken Fryston's model, thrown in a few bits from their own Sunset Overdrive engine, and the result is something truly special. And it's special because of how simple and intuitive it is. As you swing through the city, using R2, Spidey will throw out a web, starting a swing. If you want to pick up speed or web around corners, you can tap X to throw out a web zip in a horizontal line in front of you. This can also be used to zip to the top of a building or launch off a point and continue into another swing in one fluid motion. Similarly, if you make contact with a building while holding down the R2 button, Spidey will automatically run along or up the building, jumping over any obstacles in his path. What pulls this all together though and makes it feel organic and real are the animations that Spider-Man performs. There are so many variations depending on context, from his animation at the end of a swing as he performs a somersault to right himself before beginning another swing, to lifting up his legs or performing a backflip to avoid the traffic below or to dodge obstacles. That, combined with the wind as it rushes past you, or the sound as you pick up speed or run against a building, all create a sense of realism that really makes you feel that you are Spider-Man, and the experience is exhilarating and never becomes boring or repetitive. In a city this size, I would have commonly used the fast travel systems available, but in Insomniac's Spider-Man, I just couldn't bring myself to do so, as the swinging was just too much fun. So, we all know the main story is well written and a very good length, but outside of the story, what is there to actually do? Well, a whole heap of stuff. This game is seriously big. There is so much side content that at first glance it can be a little overwhelming, especially when looking at the game's map and multiple icons littered across it. You definitely get your value for money here, so let's look at what types of side missions you'll be doing. There's the usual collectibles, including Peter's backpacks from his early days as Spider-Man, and also landmarks that you can take pictures of as you travel the city. These cleverly encourage you to explore the city, giving you interesting information on Spider-Man lore and history. There are also tons of Easter eggs for Spider-Man fans, and even some Marvel references to the main films, and even some TV series including Jessica Jones and Daredevil. Of course, you're a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, so there are tons of side missions involving helping the citizens of New York City. These include stopping crime and tackling criminal thugs in the streets, taking down gang strongholds known as bases, completing research missions to make the city a safer and healthier place to live, and even story-based side missions that add some interesting story and flavor to the city. Finally, there are specific challenges for Spider-Man to tackle to hone and demonstrate his skills in combat, stealth, and traversal. Now, you may think with all this content that these side missions soon become repetitive and frustrating, but actually somehow the game succeeds in avoiding this, and I think the main reason lies in the fact that all side content has a real purpose with a very definite reward at the end, and not just in the form of gaining those elusive achievements. Each type of side mission has their own corresponding tokens. As you complete each mission, you receive tokens that can vary in numbers depending on your own performance. These tokens can then be used to unlock some pretty cool looking suits, suit abilities, and suit mods. In fact, these suits are probably the coolest part of the game. There are 25 suits in total up for grabs, each of which fans of Spider-Man will recognise with some definite head nods to the movies and comic books. Now, this is a superhero game, and I know you're all dying to hear about how the combat feels, and I've got to say, while it does take a little bit to get used to all the combos and abilities at your disposal, once you do, the combat is so satisfying. For those that have played the Arkham games, it will feel very familiar. There is, of course, a dodge button used when the spider sense flashes to show incoming danger. Spidey will leap, somersault, and do some pretty acrobatic moves in air to dodge incoming attacks and gunfire. You can mix up the usual attack button combos with finishers, which can be unleashed when your focus meter fills, performing some pretty devastating and impressive looking takedowns. On top of this, there are environmental attacks using objects around you and some awesome gadgets to help with both crowd control and taking out potential threats. Each suit also comes with its own unique suit power that allows you to build up your special meter and unleash a pretty powerful perk or ability with devastating effect. The nice thing is that you can mix and match the suit power you prefer depending on circumstances. While I am aware that many have criticised the combat and stealth sections for being too like the Arkham games, I think this is actually a positive for the game. And actually, if we're being all accurate and stuff, then technically Spider-Man did it first in Treyarch's Spider-Man 2, which used a similar dodge and counter mechanic to Batman's Arkham. So if anything, Batman is actually copying Spider-Man, technically speaking. But actually, after experiencing the combat for over 25 hours, I would say that it actually feels distinctly different to Batman's combat, and that's because of the unique verticality and fluidity of Spider-Man's moves using combos, web zips and animations. Batman's combat has always felt very brutal. When countering and delivering hits, you feel a definite resistance there, but with Spider-Man, his combat is very fluid and almost dance-like in its grace, as he constantly moves around his enemies and each move flows effortlessly into the next.
We can dance if we want to, we can leave your friends behind, 'cause your friends don't dance, and if they don't dance, well they're no friends of mine. See, we can go where we want to, places they will never find, and we can act like we come from out of this world, leave the real one far behind. We can dance.
The other gameplay mechanic that has caused mixed reactions from fans are the stealth sections within the game where you play as either Mary Jane or Miles Morales. And while I can understand why people may find these sections a bit slow and boring, similar to the puzzle solving sections where you play as Peter, I actually enjoyed all of these elements as I found them to be a nice change of pace and a refreshing break from all the web swinging and combat sections as Spider-Man. If I'm being honest, I actually found the puzzle sections a little too easy and would have enjoyed a little more variation or a little more challenge as the game progressed. Similarly, the stealth sections played as MJ and Miles were fun, if a little script in places, and more challenging AI might have made these sections more nail-biting and edge of your seat, as I'm sure the developers were going for. But still, there were some standout moments in the game for these sections, especially Miles' encounter with Rhino, which succeeded in building and sustaining a tense atmosphere pretty well throughout the level. Now, for the majority of this view, I have sung Insomniac's praise for their amazing achievement in creating a wonderfully fun and entertaining game in Spider-Man, but it is not a perfect game, and I would be remiss if I didn't point out some of its flaws. There are far too many loading screens between cutscenes that do really slow down the pacing of the game and pull you out of the mood quite often. These loading screens sometimes take too long to load and really ruin some tension-filled or epic moments on occasion. Similarly, the game is not without its bugs and glitches, and on a few occasions during my own playthrough, I came across some pretty fun glitches as Spider-Man phased through objects or people, and characters' hair seemed to have a mind of its own, which for a mostly polished game was really distracting, especially during some very dramatic or emotion-filled cutscenes. Finally, as you all know, I am not a huge fan of bullshit marketing tactics, season passes or microtransactions. While I'm glad to say that microtransactions do not have a place here, I cannot abide Insomniac's decision to blatantly pull out content from the game and then offer it to gamers for a price in 3 DLC story packs set for release in October, November and December. Insomniac have already announced that their October DLC will revolve around Black Cat. Having played the game, it is blatantly obvious that this content has been ripped, as there is a side mission involving Black Cat that is never quite realised but teased. Black Cat is actually one of my favourite characters, so I will admit my view may be a little coloured by this, but the fact that the DLC content will be released so quickly after release and must have been made before the game went golden really leaves a bit of a sour taste in my mouth. So it's with these flaws in mind that I've decided to give Spider-Man a 9 out of 10. It was so close to a 10, but I just cannot overlook my issues with the DLC to award it full marks, as I feel that the game isn't 100% complete. which is a shame because it's a bloody amazing game and absolutely deserves the title the best Spider-Man game ever made. If you're on the fence about playing this game, you absolutely need to jump in and experience everything that this game has to offer. You won't regret it. And if you're thinking of buying a PS4, I can't think of a better time than now to make that leap, or a better game to play as your first experience on the console. So, have you played Insomniac Spider-Man? Let me know in the comment section below what you thought of the game and what score you would give it. Hope you guys found this review interesting and informative. If you did, please hit the like button, comment and subscribe for more. Anyway, hope you guys have a great week, take care, and as always, happy gaming. Bye guys.